Hi, and welcome to the second hour of MindShifters Radio. And today is Thursday, January the 30th, 2025. And we're glad that you have joined us here on Needle. We are currently over at Ryan's house, taking care of him in Lincoln. So I'm going to turn this over to Michael, and I'll talk to you later. Blessings.
Thank you, dear heart. And welcome, everyone. Delighted that you're here. We're a few minutes early today. And seeing as how we're a few minutes early. Hey there, Joy Bryson. Say it again, sir.
Are you on the radio?
Well, I'm here, but actually there's been a bit of a challenge with it, and I'm the only one showing up. Have you tried to get in?
Yeah, I can hear someone breathing. I assume it was you.
Well, it is me, but I'm not showing that you're in there.
Oh.
I don't know what's happening here.
Okay. I just wanted to.
Okay, good. You're here. Actually, I just shifted over. There was something going on, and we're operational. So stay with it, and we'll move forward. I can see you here now. That's really strange, because you weren't visible, but now I hear you.
Never. I have never been invisible. Wow.
Okay, so I'm going to let you go on my other phone and come back to the show where we've got a couple of hands up. And I see Joe's hand is up on the show, and I just talked to him on the other line, and Susan's hand is up. And I'm going to apologize because no one was showing up, and I was actually waiting. I was thinking we were having difficulties. So I'm going to go ahead and say hello to Susan. Hey there, young lady. Are you with us, Susan?
Now you just disappeared and now you're back. Can you hear me?
You're loud and clear.
Oh, good.
Loud and clear. How are you this morning? There was something going on with the app and no one was showing up. And then I refreshed it and all of a sudden we've got callers there. So my apology to everyone. Welcome. Glad you're here.
I think we were all there, but you were doing your
breathing.
still point breathing.
There you go. It's just an old habit of mine. I breathe. You know, it's just kind of what I do.
All right, Michael's giving us a demonstration of the end point of all our work. Here he is. Yeah. Well, yeah. Okay. I partly called in just to make sure everything is functioning, and I guess other people are doing the same. I see some comments like, "I'm here too." Yeah. Good.
Well, on my end, on the control panel app, none of that was showing up. It is now.
Oh, okay.
So my apology to everybody.
All right. Well, it was a new experience. Okay.
I think Michael is in deep samadhi. There you go.
Right. Well, I do have a tiny report, and then I'll get off because it has nothing.
Go for it.
Well, it has everything and nothing to do with the work we're doing. I'm going to read a quote from Eckhart Tolle, which is like what you're doing.
Okay.
The moment that judgment stops through acceptance of what is, you are free of the mind. You have made room for love, for joy, and peace. So, I always think when Jesus said, judge not, I think of it judging other people. But I've been applying this to the refugee situation that we're involved in here.
Right.
It's utter chaos, lots of fear.
Yeah.
This morning I went in and there was a young woman and her young husband with 5 children they'd left behind somewhere, all of them having not eaten for however long. The mother is crying and terrified. The father's terrified because our resettlement agency had been closed down and they had just arrived. And the resettlement agency works with us. They are the ones that find an apartment, get the food, get them set up enough so that they can come to the center and get their papers in order their documentation is in order. These people should not need to be frightened
Right.
from that. But here, so they arrive here and they are a wreck, and
Terrorism.
it's unbelievable, the fear and stuff. So the first thing we got them some food, and even just a little food helps so much. And then they were settling down, and they speak Dari, which is Dari. It's a language, I think it's a derivative of Parsi or something. Not even sure. So we got out our Google Translates, and when I said my name is Susan, they thought, wow, that's a long name. My name is Susan. No, I said, it's just Susan. Sue. And then they realized the preliminaries were my name is. I mean, they're already starting to learn.
Sure.
But we had to stay afterward today to gather up some money among the volunteers to take them to get groceries. I mean, this is what our resettlement agency usually does. Suddenly, our church has a whole new level of care handed to it, and we're not really equipped. And the leader of our refugee center is a peach of a young woman. She has decided already that she's going to call the churches in our area and beg them to take on one family to sponsor until we get sorted out, if we ever do, with resettlement. Now, Tim Bingham says in the paper today that Trump got balled out so much that he has backed off, and he is now allowing funding, allowing us to open our doors for the resettlement people. That would be so fabulous. But I'm just saying the work is just coming in handy, because if you don't judge the situation and go into a panic, you can actually do some good things. And it was an amazingly joyful, even for us.
Powerful.
I mean, I don't think it was joyful for the refugees, although they got immediately wrapped in the loving arms of the refugees. The volunteers.
Those who were there to support,
Yeah, it's just amazing. So anyway.
It's amazing what happens when you're out of your mind. I mean, really, how many hundreds of times have you say, to heal, you have to be out of your mind? It's a mind that's the source of all this pain and trauma and turmoil. Unless somebody's beating your head and cancel the thought, it's all the function of the mind. And when we get the truth, the mind gets out of the way.
Right. That's true. Well, anyway, over the radio waves, anybody who's listening, there may be people who need some help. And it's sort of like one-on-one grassroots help until we get our agencies safely up and running again. And who knows when or if they will be. So anybody who's living in a city, they might want to check and just see what's needed, because the need is coming right up to our doors now. And we've had to lock our doors. We have guards at each door, just volunteers. The doors are locked, and we open and say, who are you? Are you going to be safe for us to let in?
Right.
Anyway, it's wild. It's just so different.
Well, holding the space, and delighted for the work you do. Thank you.
Well, thanks for thanking me. It's my pleasure, really. It's exhausting, but it's good. Thanks, Michael. Carry on now.
All right. Have a blessed one.
Thanks.
All righty. How are you, sir? Are you there, Joe? Joe Bryson, you are visible. You're on the air.
I am. You hear me?
You are. You're loud and clear.
Wow. I didn't know I was in queue. I thought I was invisible.
Well, here you are. You're not the invisible man any longer. We see you.
Excellent. I think I went prior to the solution, I tried to call in to see if that would affect what was happening.
Right.
So I don't have any kind of a.
Okay.
I think I will say this, today's lesson number 30 in the Course in Miracles, the second paragraph really says it all.
Share it with us, please.
Okay, let me. It's extremely insightful to me, and I shall read it. We are not attempting to get rid of what we do not like by seeing it outside. So the lesson 30 is God is in everything I see because God is in my mind.
Put an end to projection.
Yeah, I just love that we are not attempting to get rid of what we do not like by seeing it outside of ourselves. Instead, we are trying to see the world, what is in our minds, and what we want to recognize there. Thus, we are trying to join with what we see rather than keeping it apart from us. That is the fundamental difference between vision and the way I or you see.
I'm with you.
Yeah, I mean, there's lesson 30 days into the 365, and you got the whole ball of wax for me anyway. There it is. The aspect of understanding that this carbon-based unit that I have, I've never seen anything. The whole opportunity is to change my mind and have the vision from my mind as to love is in everything I see because love is in my mind.
Connecting with truth at every moment. Yay.
Yay.
I'm with you, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Any other thoughts?
No, that's it, brother. Thanks.
Okay.
Bye.
Cool. So welcome, everybody, and heading in the direction of the conversation today I was planning on having around the idea of truth. There's actually a physician that I had connected with several years ago who had done some writing about truth. And of course, one of the objectives of this work is to undo the blockage of truth that so many experience and get back to really the direct experience that we're designed for, which is that of truth. And so this gentleman wrote, and as a medical doctor, and he's actually confronting some of the challenges in medicine. And he says the most basic answer to anything is truth, not subjective, relative truth, but truth itself. All solutions to all problems lie in the truth of the problem. It is the truth that is a solution. Without it, we're lost, swimming in a sea of contradictions and arguments. And basically he's saying exactly what the Course is saying is now here we are locked in the mind. Without truth, we have untruths, lies, deception, and a sea of pain and suffering that goes on without end. It is only when there is crisis that people in desperation begin to open themselves to new truths, new ideas, for something to believe in, because times have become very bad and suffering, anxiety, and fear become more widespread. That's when people search for truth more deeply, and that is when they find out about all the lies and deceptions. He goes on to say the world of medicine has been divided in many different ways, but the greatest division is between physicians who honor truth and embrace it when it dawns on them what the truth is, and others who are not of the truth and run from it as hard as they can. Though many have put it in different terms, good versus bad, right versus wrong, decent versus indecent, with an incredible array of grayness in between, truth is more an absolute thing. There are many people who hate the truth so much, they even argue with you about how there is no proof. For instance, he uses an example that nerve toxins put in medicines or foods are dangerous and cause severe medical problems. Now we have to prove all over again that a poison is a poison, thus harmful to human physiology, something basic chemistry students already know. The absolute nature of truth is so distasteful to some, in the medical field that objectivity, actually ceases to exist as a possibility, and with that, truth is banned from medicine. Objective truths do exist independent of what we think. They exist independent of our subjective natures and our opinions or beliefs about things. And so looking at that as kind of a foundation and recognizing that, when a mind is not in touch with truth, which has an aliveness and an energy to it, then what we do is we move to the pseudo solutions of that non-being mind, the mind that appears like a mind that comes through as what we call thinking, but is really just cycling information from that space of non-being where the active presence of love is not available. And of course, that in that state, the number one solution, everybody's doing it, is to try and figure it out. And then the mind that proceeds to use words and thought from the past in a vain attempt to try and figure something out. Powerful line from the Course in Miracles says, "The truth of what we are is not for words to speak nor describe." And what you think you are is a belief to be undone. We can realize our function here, and words can speak of this and teach it too, if we exemplify the words. And so often people try to explain truth in words where, the Course very particularly clearly states the truth can't be spoken in words. And so the mind in blockage of truth is always searching using words rather than going to a direct experience. And one of the objectives, especially if you're working with A Course in Miracles, at least as I would see it, is to stop studying and do the work of removing what doesn't belong in your mind, to learn forgiveness. There's a kind of a cool forgiveness metaphor that's spoken in just a few lines. An awestruck admirer looked at Michelangelo's finished statue of David and explained, "How?" Michelangelo replied, "David was always there in the marble. I just took away everything that was not him." Course in Miracles says, your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find and forgive, of course, all of the barriers within yourself that you built against it. If one tries to establish one's self or one's power with words, then they're using that which creates the barrier, the conflict, the strife, the fear, and all the other barriers that have been built. I love what Charlie Chaplin had to say about the Course in Miracles. Of course, Charlie was long gone before the Course ever showed up, but his statement applies beautifully. He says, "You only need power to harm. Love is enough to do what matters." Whoa. Pretty powerful. Thank you, Charlie Chaplin. What a mind. You only need power to harm. Love is enough to do what matters. Now, one of the things that our minds have been trained to do when we live in this game of blockage of truth is we see what we've made as so perfect that we refuse to ever give it up. And basically, that's the whole world of words. So if truth cannot be spoken in words, why would one study words? And so the suggestion is to carry out what the course, basically what the course instructs is, and that's learn forgiveness. Words can do one thing and one thing only. They can give us directions, but they can't speak truth. They can give instructions for how to use the tools to have a direct experience of truth. And so if correct directions are given and then those directions are properly understood and followed, then one will come into a direct experience of truth. And when it happens, the physiological experience of that, the aliveness, the joy, the power in that is beyond comprehension. So our objective here is to learn forgiveness, and not the Greek idea that was fed to us in words that I'm going to let you off the hook because of the pain that's inside of me. Because, of course, if I'm experiencing pain inside of me, I'm experiencing pain inside of me because there's something inside of me that doesn't belong there, not because you said or did something. So the objective is to learn and apply this principle of forgiveness. If one is, and we've been talking about this the last couple of days, if one is stuck in perception, that lesson in the course that says, what is the world? Remember that the course replies, the world is false perception. And it describes perception. It says, it was a world made up by me to take the place of what the Creator gave me in creation. If I'm stuck in perception, I'm stuck in the past. And that particular lesson goes on to say that world will remain no longer than thought that gave it birth is cherished. Any thought that is not founded in love, but is dressed up in 1,000 different ways to make itself important, has to be given up, has to be forgiven. And the true meaning of forgiveness is removal. The removal of what never belonged within our structures in the first place. Now, most of us live in pure projection. How does that projection work? How can you tell if you're in projection? You say, oh, this upset me. That disturbed me. This causes me pain. The truth is that whatever the this is, shows me the thought with which I cause myself pain. And when I hold a thought of blame, my mind literally turns that thought into a picture, an image, painted on the inside of my eyeballs, a projection. Remember, there's another place in the course that talks about how projection makes perception. That what we hold and project into our brain's image, when the mind converts data into pictures, which is, its superpower. You feed a piece of data into the mind, and if the mind accepts it, if the mind believes it, then the mind will formulate a picture that reflects that. And most people say, see, there's the proof. No, if you're in pain, your mind is using corrupt data. That's proof of nothing. So if I hold the fake belief that you're the problem in my life, that I'm upset because of what you did, my mind will prove that errant thought is true, because my mind will literally convert that thought into a picture in my mind of what I think is you. And the beauty of, and there's only one place I found this in over 50 years of searching, and that's the first century Aramaic words of this man Yeshua, and it repeats itself in the Course in Miracles, is that when you engage in actual forgiveness, perception collapses in on itself. And when it collapses in on itself, you have direct access to the errant thought rather than access to a projection that's a result of that errant thought. The errant thought will prove itself to be true. You made me mad. I'll see a picture in my mind. And what forgiveness does, as opposed to forgiving you, as opposed to the Greek idea of letting you off the hook, and everybody that is playing this game of I forgave them or I've been forgiven, is holding that the projections based in false thinking are true, and seeing as how they're true, of course, it must be your fault that I'm in pain. And since I'm going to be the big one, I'm going to be the nice guy, I'm going to be the holy person, I'm going to forgive you. And one gets stuck in that cycle. That cycle is broken by forgiveness. And, you know, my take when I look at the state of the world, when I look at the people that I've worked with over the decades, when I study history, how long has it been since the cycle of unforgiveness has been broken within any of our bloodlines? How long has it been since someone questioned a picture in their minds that showed them and quote unquote verified for them that somebody outside of them was the problem? Of course, when one's in that state of verification, it never occurs to them they've been through this particular painful reality 87 different times with 42 different people, and all 42 times their mind proved to them that the problem was outside of them. Now, you'd think a little bit of intelligence could sneak into that mind and go, only one person has been there every time this has happened. Oh, this is about me. When I walk away from a conflict, having a conversation about myself and what I need to do, I just opened a giant healing window. And most of the world goes around going, patting themselves on the back, saying, well, see, I forgave them. I forgave them. I've even forgiven, that horrible person. When you engage in actual forgiveness, the false pictures in the mind, the pictures based in hostility and fear, corrupt data, collapse. No longer projected, you can bring that thought to the presence of love. And that mind energy, that thought, will be transmuted and your pain will be gone. And people say, well, but I don't know what the thought is. You don't have to figure it out. That's one of the beauties of first century Aramaic forgiveness. You don't have to figure out. That's back to the game of if I could just figure this out. When you're in pain, there's an energy moving in you. Yes, your mind's got a picture of whose fault it is, but the reason your physiology is feeling it is because that errant thought is in you. And all I need to do in that situation is look for what it is that I want. What's the goal that I'm holding for this person? When I load a goal in my mind, I create stress. If my goal causes my mind to use errant thoughts, i.e. corrupt data, I'm going to be in pain, and my stress will be elevated. In that state, when truth shows up, stress goes up even higher. And the mind kicks back in and says, ooh, I need to figure this out. And that leads to more error to be removed. And truth is hidden by denial. And again, remember the definition of denial that we're working with. It's a little different than the world's definition, the pretense that something that's there isn't there or something that's true isn't true. That's not our definition of denial. Our definition of denial is when I think or speak as though something outside of me is the cause of what's moving inside of me. Then I'm saying to my mind, whatever it is that's moving in me, I am not willing to look at. You must hide that from me. Hide from me the truth and create me an hallucination that proves that Everybody else is the problem in my life. Again, 87 different times with 42 different people. So what denial does is it leads to dissociation. And dissociation means whatever the truth is of this situation, I hide it from myself. When that which is truth, that reflects to you the actuality of what's going on with your pain, is hidden from you, your stress level goes down. Oh, this feels better. I've got somebody to blame. But if truth shows up, your stress level is going to go back up. That's one of the reasons why truth has been so tarnished in our culture. And the core of forgiveness is the act of, in Aramaic, the word that's been translated as forgive is shebag or shabak. And it literally means to cancel. So when I look at the situation that's going on in my life, that's driving my perception, I look at the situation, I have a goal for this situation. Remember the Harvard research we've talked about so often. In a time frame where 10,000 measurable units of electrical activity are happening in the brain, the max amount of data going on the conscious level, the max amount available that totally fills your awareness out of that 10,000 brain cells firing is 9 bits of data. And so if I'm looking at 9 bits of data, what's going on in the 9,991 under the surface? I've blocked that. I'm in blockage of truth. I've literally dissociated from the truth, and it's hidden from me, but it's hidden in me. And connected to it are energies that are of a disintegrative nature, and that's where the pain comes, because when mind energy hits a receptor site on a cell, if that mind energy relative to that cell is of a disintegrative nature, as soon as that mind energy hits the receptor site, the cell responds with pain, says, ouch, this doesn't belong here. And so what drives that whole process? What determines which 9 bits of data my mind uses to build my perception, which is literally a picture painted on the inside of my eyeballs? Again, you've never seen anything with your eyes. That's a fraud. That's a fallacy. So what do I need to do here? I cancel the goal that drives the recruiter in my mind. That is, let's say, for instance, the purpose I hold for this moment is to find you to blame for my truth. So my goal is to find you to blame. That becomes the recruiter out of those 10,000 brain cells, right? There might be 9,991 bits of data that prove that I'm responsible for what's going on inside of me, but my mind will select the 9 bits that prove that it's you, and I will literally get a visual image of how it's all your fault. You've got to be able to collapse that. There's only one person I've found in over 50 years of research that knew how to persistently do that, and this is this man Yeshua 2,000 years ago. And the word forgive, again, in Shabbat is to cancel. So again, it's not about the Greek trickery that if I let you off the hook, then I've forgiven. Letting others off the hook is a great thing to do. It's pardoning, but it's not forgiveness. Forgiveness, one must learn ultimately. And as we said in yesterday's lesson, forgiveness is not inherent in the mind. It's something that needs to be learned. One must ultimately learn that forgiveness is a totally 1000% internal process, and it's about collapsing false perception, freeing oneself from the constructs of the false mind, the entanglements of the past. That means that ultimately you're going to end up facing and working through every generational issue of your bloodline. People say, well, that's just too much to do. Well, you might say it's too much to do, but once you know that's what blocks truth in the mind and keeps people in this blame game, by the age of 4, most everyone is a very devout, committed, and very religious member of the one world universal religion of blame. Just listen to them. Just take a look at the political world today and watch how every event that happens and the people who live in blocked truth within seconds, and there's a big event that just happened in the last day or two, and a big mouth person in the last day or two that came right out with, oh, the problem is, and of course, who did he blame? Somebody else in the other party who's gone from power. I understand there was actually a correction given to that. Forgiveness is liberation from the image-making capability of the perceptual mind and all of the thought disorders that underlie its function. And when you realize that the possibility, the knowledge that that's even conceivable, just look through history, find it. Again, in Aramaic, the word forgive is shabag. It means to cancel. The goal that I hold for this situation, oh, I want to find you to blame. I cancel my need for you to be to blame. Now the errant thoughts that I made up or that are generationally structured within me, the thought disorders that I've learned or inherited from my culture, my past generations, again, by the age of 4, just listen to the child of 4. And if they think there's a threat, if they think that somebody's going to catch them at what they're doing, what's the first thing they do? They talk about blame. And the 4-year-olds that live in bodies that are 6'6" and, weigh 280 pounds, it's the same game. And we've all inherited that from our culture, from our generations. And that's what must be faced and removed ultimately. So what one must be prepared to do is to learn a totally new skill. And that skill is not, if you look for something in your past that matches it, you're not going to find it. The skill does not look anything like anything that you've learned from the world of perception. And if you remember in that lesson on what is the world in the course, it talks about perception is the world of darkness, where truth and light are not allowed. How do you collapse perception? You remove the driver that causes the mind to use this particular data to build this particular construct in your mind. Remember the Course speaks about you're never upset for the reason you think? There's a place that says, how can you learn something so different from what you've taught yourself? How do you collapse perception? So let's first understand what it is that we need to collapse. Though it appears we see a whole world outside of us through our eyes, the only thing we've ever, quote unquote, seen that we think we're seeing with our eyes are pictures generated by our brains. That's why 6 different people can stand around an accident. And if you listen to them in court, you'd swear that no 2 of them were at the same accident, because the constructs of their minds were all so different. So what we call seeing is nothing but a world constructed by our minds based on the patterns we've learned in our family systems and in our cultural systems. Seeing happens in the mind, not with the eyes. I remember one of those early lessons in the course. I haven't given this all the meaning it has for me. When we think we see something outside of us, how many have ever, been accused? When you did this and you did that, and you look at that person, your jaw drops. It's like, but that never happened. Oh, yes, it did. You ever had someone say to you when you told them what you saw? You ever have someone say, that never happened? If it's based in hostility or fear, and it reflected in your perception, they're telling you the truth. It never happened except as a construct in your mind. So this skill called perception is an image-making capability with which with which the mind constructs its world to match what it's been trained through the generations is familiar, seems desirable, and seems to be true. And of course, what's true? It's always somebody else's fault. And the truth is that the only feature actually demanded by this skill is that it be familiar. If it fits with the good old family feeling, then it's fine with me. It has to fit the family pattern. And here's one of the biggest tragedies of all, that's what keeps us locked into the roles that we've been assigned within the family. If the role is painful, it's degrading, it's abhorrent, but it's our role and we constructed it, then it becomes desirable. The role is often totally false, it's a fraud, but having been convinced it's who we are, we accept that false identity as true. And it's going to require significant effort, a little willingness, and a set of tools to free yourself from it. One of the things that the mind does is it sees only perfection in its own creations, no matter how painful they are. And people will go back and play out those painful perceptions over and over and over again and think themselves holy and justified. This world, this internally world of generated world of perception, it comes complete with color, sound, emotions, and a whole construct which we substitute for life and the actual experiences being presented by life. Somebody would say, well, why would anybody tolerate such a fraud? I offer it's because what I have made is more familiar. Look at the root of that word, familiar, family. The good old family feeling, the family patterns. And it's more desirable because, after all, it's my creation. I made it, therefore it must be perfect. And with these beliefs, the technique of substitution becomes acceptable. That is, the actuality presents us with an event, an experience, and the mind habitually replaces that actuality with the pattern belief, and the bottom line, remember we talked about the power person dynamic. The bottom line is one will play out that power person dynamic over and over and over again, because by playing it out and attempting to master it, one thinks that they can become the substitute for God. And in this case, the definition of God is the person who created the original tragedy in my life, the power person. Few are aware, and even fewer will admit it, but everyone lives in a world that is a perceptual construct of their own making. And that's the whole world that forgiveness is aimed at. How do you forgive? Well, first of all, recognize you cannot forgive, but you have a part to play in it. I don't know how to move the energies that are in my cellular structure, but there's a power in me, and here's where the theology came up with: only the Creator can forgive. But it's not the Greek idea, only the Creator is going to let you off the hook because the Creator is the one who judged you. That's totally false. But only the Creator can move the energetic patterns that need to be moved. But since we've been given choice, if we do not choose to let them be liberated, then they cannot be liberated. So the Course offers this thought: your part in the forgiveness process. Again, do you know how to move one chemical in your cell? Do you know how to move one thought in your structure? Course says your part is merely to return your thinking to the point at which the error was made. So that is, return your mind to the original thought disorder. And someone says, well, but wait a minute, you told me that might be 10 generations old. How can I take my thought back to that? I don't remember that. Returning to where the original thought disorder happened is not a function of memory. It's not something you have to go lay on the psychiatrist's couch and go over and over and over, and after 25 years you finally go, bingo, oh, that's it. It's not a function of memory, which is something you made up. Returning your mind to the point where the error occurred is a function of forgiveness. It isn't about remembering. It isn't about going back and searching through the dark, dirty past for what happened. Have you ever noticed that you're never upset with anyone? I mean, unless you're just a generally miserable person. You're never upset with anyone, self included, unless they or you violate a goal that you hold? Notice you're generally, you're pretty happy with everybody while they're fulfilling all the goals you have for them, right? You have this person and you say, I love you. And then that person doesn't fulfill the goal that you held for them. And what happens? In an instant, love turns to rage or hate, attack. Did it have anything to do with love in the first place? No. It was a venial form of approval. When most people say, I love you, what they really mean is, I approve of you because you're doing everything that I want you to do. You're fulfilling the goals I have for you. Now, remember that line in the Course, the thought in the Course that says, you must become aware of the distorting power of the way you want it to be. When you hold a goal, that goal is the driver for perception. Removal of a goal involved in any given false perception allows that perception to collapse. How can you tell if you're in false perception? Some form of hostility or fear is moving. So in Aramaic, the word forgive is shabag or shabak, and it means to cancel. When you literally, specifically, and precisely locate the goal you hold for whoever it is you're pointing your pain at, which may be yourself in the mirror, when you cancel that goal, having removed the driver for your false perception, your false perception collapses. That is your part in the forgiveness process. That's your primary part. Locate the way you want it to be. Remember, the specific instructions are there in the Course. I've never found anybody working with the Course in over 4 decades of working with it that's ever found the instructions for forgiveness. that even knows how to forgive is still doing, well, I'll let you off the hook. No. Here's what the Course says. Let go all the things you think you want. Your trifling treasure put away, and leave a clean and open space within your mind for the active presence of love to come and dissolve, now I'm paraphrasing there, and dissolve the underlying pain or trauma. So your part in the process is to locate the goal, cancel it, and invite love in. Invite the breath in. Invite, in Aramaic, it was Ruka Dukudsha. Ruka Dukudsha in Aramaic speaks of a feminine elemental force in us that undoes the effects of our errors and teaches us the truth. It is the breath. Now, like anything else that's new, let's go back to the time before the apple fell on what's his name's head that quote unquote discovered gravity. Did anybody think of flying airplanes? Well, they thought about it, but they knew it was impossible. And it was impossible. You can't fly heavier than their machines. I mean, everybody knows that. That was the truth. But then this guy Newton had an apple fall on his head, and he went, things I notice always fall down. Ooh, there must be a force involved here. And when we became aware of that force and started to understand it, we began to be able to do things we could not do previously, like fly airplanes. There is a feminine elemental force in each of us that Yeshua talked about and taught us about 2,000 years ago that by definition, one is feminine, gendered feminine, two, undoes the effects of errors and teaches us the truth. And you know what we call it? We call it the breath. Churchianity calls it the Holy Spirit. But there's nothing in this idea from the Aramaic of a disembodied spirit being. It's teaching us about this elemental force in us that when invited into activity, literally can reach into the very depths, 10, 100, 1,000 generations back and undo whatever energetic patterns are there and free us from them. Gravity is discovered. What, when we really start to learn about that elemental force, what will we be capable of? What can it do for us, in us, through us, with us? Our goals are the key way of forgiveness. Canceling them is the how-to of forgiveness. Inviting, and how do you invite that feminine elemental force into activity in you? You breathe. You watch people in pain and trauma, and they don't breathe. And so joining you for a moment to breathe and allow that power to loosen and undo any and every tension in you that needs to be undone. Anywhere that you're pointing and having a conversation about them and what they did to you and what's wrong with them, stop. Now, maybe you're right, maybe what they did is off base and, maybe illegal, immoral, and they need to be held accountable, but they're not your problem if you're in some form of pain or trauma. You need to work out what's creating your dis-ease. What ultimately is the energy that is of a disintegrative nature to you needs to be removed from you in order to undo death. That's what we're here to support you in. And I join each and every one of you in having the best year yet of your eternal life. It is an awesome gift to give the world. Delighted to be sharing this space with you. Blessings. Bye-bye.